Hagai is executive director of B'Tselem and lives in Jerusalem. Previously, he was director of the Association for Civil Rights in Israel from 2008 to 2014, and the Jerusalem Open House for Pride and Tolerance from 2000 to 2006. In 2014, Hagai was among Foreign Policy's 100 leading global thinkers. In 2016 and again in 2018, he spoke before the United Nations Security Council, calling for international action in order to end the occupation. Hagai will be addressing the facts and circumstances which have constituted the basis and foundation for the conclusions on the issue of apartheid for each of these organizations. And I welcome Hagai to the podium.
So before anything else, I wanted to thank the organizers, and thank you for that kind introduction, and to recognize my esteemed colleagues, and to thank all of you for taking the time to be here this evening. I think it's interesting that this panel is opening with, if I'm not mistaken, one of the only two people on stage right now who does not have a formal legal education. I'm one of them. I'll let you guess who the other person is. But perhaps this is not just such a coincidence. Recognizing apartheid is not complicated. It is a lived experience. And human rights are not for experts. They are for humans. So yes, of course, there are legal criteria for what qualifies as apartheid. And I'm sure that you'll hear, for instance, coming presentations, about the three elements of the crime. One, an institutionalized regime of systematic oppression and domination by one racial group over another. Two, inhumane acts. And three, the intent to maintain such a regime. But as the non-lawyer on stage, I want to offer a different opening. Because when your home is being bulldozed, I suspect that you're not counting the elements of the crime. You're trying to survive. You're thinking of your family. And when you can't have a life together with your beloved across the green line because of Israel's racist laws, I suspect that you're not contemplating whether this would have been categorized under petty apartheid or under grand apartheid in South Africa. You'd be thinking of love and loss. And if you're trying to hold up a Palestinian flag in Israeli university and they plan to legislate against you, and if you try to do it in Hawara, in the occupied West Bank, and they send the army to take it down, and if you try and do it in the next East Jerusalem and they club you with a baton, I suspect that you're not focused at those moments on the fine differences between the definition of apartheid as it appears in the Rome Statute of the ICC versus the one that appears in the Apartheid Convention. You're probably thinking of identity and dignity and hope. So, what I do want to focus on is apartheid in its most real sense, apartheid as a lived experience. Palestinians have been living through it and saying that for decades, and over the last year and a half, an unprecedented consensus has emerged in the human rights community. Palestinian, Israeli, and international human rights groups, many of them on this stage this evening, coming to the same conclusion, that a regime so focused on the re-engineering of demography, Jews are welcome, Palestinians are not, and so intent on the re-engineering of geography, land as a resource for Jews to be taken from Palestinians, and so committed to this re-engineered political structure, Jews are in power, Palestinians are subjugated, is exactly what it looks like, apartheid. And that the fact that Israel has allocated Palestinians many different options of less, but not a single option of equal, does not obscure the fundamental fact that there isn't a single square inch between the river and the sea where a Jewish person and a Palestinian person are equal. And that, as the 1967 Green Line has been practically erased if you're Jewish, while being used to fragment Palestinians, and since by now some 10% of the Jewish population already lives over there, beyond that line, but has privileges and protections as if it lives here within that line, and since part of the occupied territory, East Jerusalem, has already been formally annexed, while the rest has been de facto annexed, and since this has been going on for 55 years, 15 of which, the biggest Palestinian Bantustan, Gaza, has been under a blockade, and since, and now this is the key, the same policies that advance Jewish supremacy are in effect everywhere under Israel's control, then it is divorced from reality to hold on to a fake distinction between here and there. It is a one-state reality controlled by a single regime, and that is an apartheid regime. But this lived reality has another layer to it, and that is the layer of arrogance, of dehumanization, and of raw violence. Because when Israeli police officers are ordered to attack a funeral and no one refuses to follow through, well, that abomination requires the people in front of you, the Palestinian mourners, to first be dehumanized. And when Israeli snipers are ordered to fire from a distance at Palestinian demonstrators on the Gaza fence, and this order is followed with thousands of live bullets week after week, well, this war crime requires Palestinians to first be dehumanized. But the essential aspects of such dehumanization do not pronounce themselves through the actions of individual police officers or soldiers. The essence is expressed through the polite brutality of government ministers, elected officials, high-ranking officers, and high court justices. Because to sign a court ruling spelling out the forcible transfer of more than 1,000 human beings, as just happened a few weeks ago regarding the Palestinian communities of Masafer Yatta, that requires 3 arrogant judges who are committed to enforcing apartheid. Because under such a regime, the land is ours, a resource for the Jewish population, and the Palestinians can go to hell. How are these judges different, really, from those chanting disgusting racist slurs and attacking Palestinians in the Jewish Supremacy March in Jerusalem's Old City the day before yesterday? The lived experience is that of a defenseless civilian population that is courageously holding on against a relentless, racist, violent assault by Israel's laws and decrees, judges and soldiers, planners and police officers. This must not be tolerated. No regime should be allowed to treat people in such a way, let alone in a reality relating to about half of the population under its control. The consensus we all arrived at is based in truth and grounded in fact. We name it apartheid because our job is to name things as they are. And with this consensus, we are stronger. And with this consensus, we have hope to end impunity, to dismantle apartheid, to see a radically different future finally realized. Justice for all, full rights for all, dignity for all, and nothing less. Thank you very much.